Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Vanessa Perry, and I am the interim dean of the GW School of Business. And I'm absolutely delighted to present to you today the second annual Business and Policy Forum, Imagining the Future with AI. We know that AI is here across industries globally, and we're here today to talk about its impact and talk about how we might regulate this impact. And we have convened a really impressive set of experts to talk about these issues. I'd like to thank our sponsors who, without their support, this could not be possible. Our gold sponsor, Mosaic Insurance. Silver sponsors, Business Management Associates, Inc., Chief Outsiders, Paladin Capital Group, and Dell Technology. Our bronze sponsors, Bright MLS, General Dynamics Information Technology, KPMG, and the Penn West Equity and Innovation District. I'd also like to thank our community partner, the Greater Washington Board of Trade. So I'll tell you just a quick story about my relationship with artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's a very scary story, and it started a long time ago when I saw a movie. It's actually a horror movie because it was horrible. It's called Demon Seed. Has anybody in here ever seen Demon Seed? It is awful. The acting is awful. The plot is ridiculous. But here I am years later talking about Demon Seed yet again. It was about a guy who basically created an artificially intelligent, it was a smart home, basically, and it could do things, it could cook, it could give it instructions, and it took on a life of its own. And this is an old film, this is like 1977. So all of this technology exists. At any rate, the house takes on a life of its own, falls in love with the man's wife, kidnaps her, and banishes the man from the house. It goes downhill from there. It's just really ridiculous. But it's so memorable because, one, all of that technology actually exists now. But after that movie, I've always been a little bit skeptical of the machines. So we don't think the machines are really going to take over. But that's why we're here today, to talk about these kinds of issues. So it is now my honor to introduce Dr. Ellen M. Granberg, the 19th president of the George Washington University. Thank you all for coming.
Well, hello and good morning, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the George Washington University and the 2024 GW Business and Policy Forum. I'd like to thank the Interim Dean, Vanessa Perry, of the GW School of Business, and our sponsors for supporting, organizing, and hosting today's event, and our guest speakers for lending their time and expertise. And I particularly want to extend a thank you to all of you who have joined us here today for this important conversation. The theme of this year's forum, Imagining the Future with AI, is especially apt for both this time and this institution. We're in a moment of immense potential, animated by unprecedented support for science and technology and a rapidly evolving technological landscape, particularly in the area of generative technologies like AI. As I highlighted in the opening video, the George Washington University has always been a place where world-class faculty, students, and staff come together to tackle pressing challenges and to harness emerging opportunities to build a greater world. Because of our location here in the heart of the nation's capital, GW can connect science, technology, and innovation with law, policy, and ethics like no other institution. And this is why we strongly believe that collaboration is at the heart of all progress. And it's why we remain dedicated to working across academia, industry, and government to accelerate our understanding of important technologies like artificial intelligence and to ensure it has a safe and positive impact on our lives and our communities. For example, GW is proud to co-lead the NSF Institute for Trustworthy AI in Law and Society, which we do in partnership with the University of Maryland and Morgan State University. This is a first-of-its-kind research institute exploring how artificial intelligence can safely and effectively integrate into our lives. In addition, several GW Arts and Sciences departments recently came together to host a university-wide symposium that grappled with the interdisciplinary intersection of AI and aspects of contemporary society, including philosophy, ethics, culture, and politics. By breaking down disciplinary silos and bringing together faculty across universities, we're helping to lead the way to a future in which AI and other generative technologies enhance, improve, and protect the human experience. One of the most fundamental questions that we face as we start to build out generative technologies is the way in which we need to be able to trust both the processes by which AI generates these seemingly magical results and the results themselves. And that's why this morning GW was proud to announce the launch of the GW Trustworthy AI Initiative, which provides a central nexus for our university's research and educational endeavors that seek to understand this critical question. Today's forum is an extremely important part of that conversation because it's critical that this work extend beyond the boundaries of higher ed. Today, we have the opportunity to come together as faculty, students, and staff of GW and industry, government, and policy leaders to discuss the current state of AI, its immense opportunities, and the important questions that will determine both its trajectory and ours. We have an outstanding set of speakers and attendees, and I'm sure that you will all find this to be a fascinating and compelling day. I have the honor of introducing our keynote speaker, the co-founder and co-executive chairman of the Carlyle Group and chairman of the Economic Club, Mr. David Rubenstein. With decades of experience in navigating changes in business, government, and technology, Mr. Rubenstein brings a unique perspective on what a future infused with AI might look like, how these technologies may impact global business and policy, and what we can all do to take advantage of this future. You may also know that Mr. Rubenstein's been a frequent visitor to GW, appearing twice on our George Talks Business series, and I'm so very glad that he could join us again today. Please join me in welcoming David Rubenstein.
So how many people here are students at GW? Anybody? How many people are faculty here? How many people are not sure why they're here? Okay, so how many people here think AI is a good thing? Okay, how many people are afraid of AI? How many people think that they're going to find it harder to get a job with AI? How many people think AI will make it easier for them to get a job? Oh, wow. Okay. Well, let me give you my own perspectives, and I give you my perspectives as what I call a last adopter. I'm usually the person who adopts a new technology last. So I'm still the last person in the United States to use a BlackBerry, and probably the last person that got an iPhone. So you should discount what I'm saying about AI a bit, because I'm not the expert that everybody else is who's going to follow me. And I was thinking about this last night, and I got a letter from an email from somebody that people here probably know a lot about because of this university. It was from George Washington, and he said that he wished that he had had AI when he was alive in some respects, but some respects he's glad he didn't. Why would he say that? Well, if AI had been around when George Washington was fighting the Revolutionary War, he never would have taken the assignment, because AI would have said, you can't possibly win this war, because you have no chance. They're the biggest army in the world. They have enormous amounts of resources. They've got other people coming in who are mercenaries. You have a ragtag army who can't possibly win. No AI in the world would have predicted that George Washington would have won that war. So in that respect, it's good that AI wasn't around. On the other hand, had AI been around, he never would have put Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Hamilton in the same, Alexander Hamilton in the same cabinet, because they couldn't stand each other. He would have known that. He also would have known that had AI been around, that he probably would have lived longer, because as some of you may know, George Washington died a little bit in a premature situation. He said he was riding around in his farm, and he came back, and it was sleeting and raining that day, and he was very wet. And because he was courteous, he didn't want to go upstairs and change because he had guests there. And the guests had come to have dinner with him, and very often George Washington, because of who he was, people would come who he didn't even know, would come and just say, we want to pay our respects, and by the way, could we have dinner? And so he never liked to be impolite. He would host them for dinner. This particular time, he came back, and they were there. He was a little wet, and he didn't go up and change, so he sat there for a couple hours, and he, later that night, got a cold. The epiglottis in the back of his throat was swollen. He didn't really know what to do. They called the doctors, but in the interim, they did something that was very common then. It's called bloodletting. You cut your veins and let the blood come out, because the bad spirits will come out. Now, that is not a good idea. And actually, when the doctor showed up, the doctor said, yeah, it's a good idea, but maybe you don't need more of it. He already had lost most of a lot of his blood. So had AI been around, George Washington would have lived longer. So in some respects, AI was, good that it wasn't around for him, because had he had AI, he would never have fought in the Revolutionary War. He would have said, forget it, I can't win. On the other hand, had AI been around, it would have probably told him, don't use bloodletting. But we all have to think about whether AI is going to make our lives better or worse. And just think about this for a moment. Humans, all of us, are Homo sapiens. We are roughly 400,000 years old. We came out of caves roughly 400,000 years ago after some little interbreeding with Neanderthals. And if all of you look at your DNA, you probably have 1 or 2% Neanderthal blood in you, and that's because the Neanderthals and the Homo sapiens couldn't resist the forces of nature, and they had some interbreeding. But anyway, most of you have 98, 99%, I would say, Homo sapien blood. 400,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens appeared and started coming out of caves, do you think the other animals that were there would say, these humans are going to conquer the earth, and they're going to be our, in effect, bosses? If you were an elephant, you would say, well, the humans are so small, they aren't going to be able to control us. Or if you were the tiger, you would say the humans are not fast enough to really, or ferocious enough to really conquer us. And so, you would have said, if you were one of these animals, how can we possibly worry about these little humans wandering around? We'll just basically push them aside. But it turned out that humans conquered the earth, and now we run this earth. This body, this planet, we run it, we control it. Humans have the capacity to destroy the earth and the capacity to control all the animals that probably never took us seriously. Now, how did that happen? Well, we weren't as tall as other animals, we weren't as big as other animals, we weren't as fast as other animals, but we had one thing the other animals didn't have. We had a brain that was an incredible creation that never was replicated in any other animal that we know of. Obviously, some animals are very, very smart, dolphins and others, but nobody has quite the ability that we have with our brain. So we've used this brain over the last 400,000 years to create a civilization that couldn't have been imagined 400,000 years ago. Nobody would imagine today the kind of things that we have. And just thinking in my own lifetime how new things have come along that I never would have imagined. I grew up in the 1950s in Baltimore, and we didn't have, and I tell my children this and their jaws drop, we didn't have at the time cell phones, we didn't have internet, we didn't have personal computers, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have Amazon to deliver everything we need. How did we live? And my children say, how did you live? I mean, how did you get by? Well, obviously, technology has come along over every few decades or so. New technologies come along. At the beginning of this country, We had new technology like the steam engine. The steam engine revolutionized transportation. Then the railroad revolutionized that even more, the automobile and so forth. New technologies always come along, and every time they come along, you have the same reaction. This is a bad thing for humanity. This is going to destroy jobs, and this is going to hurt me. And there obviously, there are some people who will be hurt by new technologies that come along, but in the end, civilization does tend to get along better when these new technologies come along. And so if you think of the technologies that have existed that came about in the last 40 years, all of us are benefited from with them. The DNA technology, when DNA was discovered, RNA technology, which a lot of us benefited from with COVID vaccine, immunotherapy, which is a really incredible way to kind of decide whether you can have certain diseases cured or at least reduced in some respect. Or take the cell phone. Today, how many of you can get through the day without looking at your iPhone? How many of you never look at the iPhone during the day? Okay. How many of you are obsessive compulsive and look at it every 3 or 4 minutes? Okay, me too. So just think about that. How did we get to this point where we're so dependent on these technologies? And interestingly, these technologies we're all dependent on, where did they come from? Came from the United States, largely. It's very interesting that Europe, which has a population that's bigger than ours by about 200 million people, we don't depend on any European technology now to get through your day. You don't need, the technologies are all American. Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, these technologies, and also the most important, Netflix, of course. These technologies are American inventions. Why is it that Europe hasn't come along with technologies we need? Not clear. China has come along with one that we all seem to need now, which is called TikTok. It's very upsetting to people in the United States to have a technology we didn't invent. But think all these technologies that made our lives, I think, somewhat better. Obviously, you can argue that some of these technologies are not so wonderful. But generally, people are happy with them, or you wouldn't use these technologies, and people wouldn't benefit from them. The companies wouldn't grow as much as they have. Now comes AI. And AI comes along, and it says, guess what? We're going to change the world. And everything you knew before is really outdated a bit. And you need to use AI if you're going to survive in the new world. And AI has a lot of great features to it. It's been around in some ways, many different versions for quite some time, but generative AI is obviously relatively new. But think about this. How many people here would say that they are happy that there is AI that's come along? How many people are happy? Okay. How many people think your life will be much better? Much better. How many of you think you will lose your job because of AI at some point? Anybody? Okay. Well, the truth is a lot of jobs are already being lost because of AI. In many software companies, other places, people are losing their jobs. Now, they will retool themselves, no doubt, and that's the history of technology. And so I think we shouldn't be afraid of AI because, yes, it can be bad to the person who loses his or her job, but generally those people can retool. And as the history of the world shows, when new technologies come along, generally the world benefits. So think about the GDP of the world was basically flat for about 1,000, 2,000 years. So if you take from, let's say, the birth of Christ to roughly, 1,000 years, 1,000 AD, the GDP of the world basically didn't move at all. And then probably the GDP came up a little bit, but not until the latter part of the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, after the Enlightenment and so forth, things came along. People had the Industrial Revolution. When the Industrial Revolution came along, essentially GDP went up dramatically. And since that time, GDP per capita has been going up fairly dramatically in developed parts of the world because new technologies have come along. So I think we shouldn't be afraid of AI, but I think we should think about it very carefully. And some things I think we should think about are these. One, is it important that the United States be the leader in AI? Suppose China became the leader of AI. Would we say we should ban AI because China is the leader of it? Well, obviously some people in the United States might say that. But the United States has a lead over China, to use one example, for about 5 years or so. We're about 5 years ahead of China in tech and AI development. But that's 5 years is not that long a period of time. So we've got to keep developing it and so forth and so on. But and the theory being that if you have these new technologies and you develop them and you're the leader in them, your country will be better off, and I presume that the United States will be better off if we are the leader in AI. How should we regulate it? Well, we don't really regulate a lot of technologies that much, and then when they become so big and so powerful, we then sue them in antitrust litigation, then that usually goes over 10 years and nothing really happens. Right now, I would say AI is relatively loosely to non-regulated. And I would say it's probably not a bad idea if there were some regulation, some ground rules, so we know, what the rules of the road are, and basically set some standards that help people in a way that I'll mention in a moment. So, for example, I'm not in favor of regulation of all things, and you can always over-regulate in the United States, but there was a man whose life was saved at GW, named Ronald Reagan, saved at the GW hospital, came very close to dying, very close to dying, saved at GW, the hospital. And he famously said that the most dangerous words in the English language are, "I'm here from the federal government and I'm here to help you." And so when the government comes along to try to help you and regulate, sometimes it doesn't work out. But I think in this case, I look at AI and how it can be regulated and how it can be modified and how it can be used in ways that aren't dangerous for society, I think would be a good thing. And probably that'll happen and will take some time. AI is something that I think will change the face of every industry. And I know in let me mention two industries that I'm involved with now. I've been in private equity for a long time, and we have developed a relationship with a very well-known AI company at my firm, and we have some really good insights as to what's going on there. And how is it affecting us? Well, what we're now able to do is take a look at, it's not perfected yet, but take a look at, I'll put all the data in, and through AI, we can say, should we make this investment or should we not make this investment? Right now, for the last 30-some years at Carlyle, we've been sitting down, we read the investment memos, and then people come together and we have a discussion, and we say we should do this deal or not do this deal. And sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. But with AI, we can, with the new types of AI that the chips are developing and other kinds of information, we're able now, not perfected yet, it will be at some point, but we will be able to, and not too long from now, basically sit down and say, well, we don't really care what you think or you think, let's just put it into the machine and let the AI to tell us whether we should do this deal or not. And maybe that's a good thing, maybe not. But in the end, I'd like to remind people that artificial intelligence is a word that scares people. It's really, in my view, enhanced human intelligence, because in the end, humans are programming these chips and programming these kind of computer programs. And so in the end, we shouldn't just blame something called artificial intelligence. It's really humans that are behind it. And so in my case, Carlyle, we are going to be in the future probably able to use AI to tell us whether we should would do this deal or not. We also now are using AI in our portfolio companies. We own several hundred companies around the world, and we now are able to take this technology and say to these companies, here's how you can run your business better. We have AI techniques and information that you don't have, that we have ability to help you, and that's going to be a new thing as well, and it will change the face of the investment world for sure. But AI has some, and also another area I've gotten in recently, some of you may know, I recently bought with some partners a baseball team, the Baltimore Orioles. And I talked yesterday to the general manager, and he tried to explain to me how it's not quite called AI, but it's enhanced analytics is really essentially almost the same as AI, and it's getting in that direction. Can assess a baseball player and assess his chances of doing well and so forth against other players and so forth. And it's really an incredible dramatic change. In the old days, you looked at hits, RBIs, home runs, strikeouts, and those were the key indicia of how a player was performing. Now there are so many other indicia that only humans really have to use computers to kind of digest, and through artificial intelligence are increasingly being used in all sports to decide what play you should use, what player you should use, and it's really changing the face of sports as well as it is of other parts of society. But how should somebody who's a student here, or anybody who's just here today, how should you take advantage of AI? How can you take advantage of it? Suppose you're a last adopter like me and you don't know technology that well. Well, what I'd like to tell people is that as much as AI will change the face of humanity, and I think for the good on the whole, though with obviously some exceptions if it gets in the wrong hands and so forth, I think that you shouldn't overlook some basic skills that I think every student and every young professional needs. I'm amazed at how many people I interview for jobs can't write very well. The ability to write in a simple language that people can understand is something that AI maybe can help you a bit with, but I think you have to practice, 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 and we're not likely to have AI enabled to write things for you as well as I think you could do it yourself if you actually practice. I'm also amazed at how many times people don't read very much. Today, it's often considered to be a well-read person if he or she reads a lot of Twitter messages. You know, I don't know whether how many students today or young professionals actually still read books. In the United States, it is said that 50% of the people who graduate from college never read another book for 5 years. In 5 years, they don't read one book on average. 53% don't read another book for 5 years after they graduate from college. So, now books aren't everything, and you can read things that aren't books, but sadly, I think we are thinking that Twitter messages or other things on Instagram is a way of, when you read that, that's what's called reading. I think reading requires concentration of the brain, and really reading books really helps you do that. And so I think students, young professionals need to make certain that as AI comes along, they're not only writing and learning how to write in English that's understandable and can communicate well, but also they are learning how to read on a regular basis, have a regular basis of reading a lot of what's going on, because if you don't read, you're not going to know really what's going on. Third, students should learn how to communicate orally much better than they do. They can't sit behind computer screens all the time. And the only way you can really get ahead in the professional world, in my view, and maybe in life, is influencing other people. You think about it, no human being can do anything by him or herself of any consequence. Even Albert Einstein, with E equals mc squared, had to convince people of that for a while, and it took a while to do that. You have to convince people to do what you want. Your spouse, your partner, your teacher, whoever it might be, you spend 99% of your life trying to convince somebody to do what you want. Well, how do you convince somebody to do something what you want? Well, you can write something. You don't have to be Abraham Lincoln writing the Gettysburg Address, but learn how to write. Or you can learn how to speak well in a way that communicates what you want in a reasonable way. You don't have to be Martin Luther King at the Lincoln Memorial, but learning how to communicate orally is very helpful. And then also, the best way to influence people is by example. So when George Washington, the namesake of this university, when he was fighting the Revolutionary War, during the tough years of 1777, he stayed in Valley Forge with his troops. He could have gone to the Ritz-Carlton down the street, he could have gone to the Four Seasons, but no, he said, I'm going to stay with my troops, because by staying with my troops, they will see that I am putting up with some of the pain that they're putting up with. And really, that's what enabled him, I think, to be an effective leader. And so you always lead by example. And so that's how you influence other people. And so all the AI kinds of improvements in our lifestyle and our knowledge of things are useful, but I think they're going to be taken advantage of best by students, young professionals who really know how to write, read, orally communicate, and also lead by example. So I think AI is something that has some advantages, but you shouldn't look at AI as the solution to all problems. So let me ask you a question about AI. Let's see what the hands are. Let's suppose I have an AI system, and AI has put into the system everything about you, everything about your health, everything about medical situation in the world. And I can tell you today what day you will die. How many people would like to know what day they would die? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, a couple people. It is interesting that the world has worked in a certain way that we know, it takes 9 months to have a child. It takes so long to do X, Y, and Z. But one thing that we don't know is we don't know when we're going to die in advance. Why is it that God or evolution or whatever you might believe in did not say, well, okay, you live 90 years and that's it, or you live 80 years, 100 years, whatever it might be. But suppose AI came along and said, based on all the data we have, we know exactly how long you will live. And a couple of people want to know. Suppose I could tell you with AI, I know exactly what disease you're going to get over the next 10 years. How many people would want to know what disease they're going to get over the next 10 years? Okay, wow. How many people think that by knowing what disease you're going to get, you're going to be better able to prepare for it? Solving it, okay. Well, AI will enable you to probably do that. I don't really think most people probably want to know when they're going to die. That's my guess. But how many people here would like to know through AI exactly who they're going to marry if they're going to get married? How many people would like to know 10 years in advance through AI who is the person you're going to marry? You can get the name of the person based on all kinds of AI. How many people want to know? Wow. How many people here would like to know how long it is before they get divorced? Okay. Well, AI will probably enable you to do that. And the question is, do you really want to know that in advance? You know, there's some information you may not want to know. But I think AI will be able to tell you things that today we can't really know. And probably AI could tell you when you're likely to die, obviously within a couple of months probably or so forth. AI can tell you so many things that, well, today we can do this without even AI, but it will be enhanced. How many people would like to know if they're going to get Alzheimer's? Okay, how many people don't want to know that? Okay, so I think AI will be able to do things and tell us things that we may want to know and we may not want to know. But I think all of us should figure out how we can take advantage of AI, use it in an appropriate way, but not be afraid of it, but not let it control our lives. If you let AI control your lives, I think you're going to live a very unhappy life. You have to really get pleasures out of life from things that are not going to be just AI. And I just encourage people here to think about AI as another technology that's going to come along, like cell phones and other kinds of technologies, computers, other things we've now grown used to, as something you can use to make your life better, but don't let it control your life. And my fear is that sometimes people will let it control their lives. And I have another fear I'll mention before I conclude. The internet came along, and the internet has changed the world in ways that nobody could have anticipated when it first came along, for sure. Just imagine this. Think about this. Today, how many of you do not use the internet every day? How many people? Nobody. Everybody uses the internet. Okay. But you use it because you're from the United States, you're reasonably prosperous, you're in a well-educated community. But a large part of the world has no access to the internet, no access to high-speed internet. And so those people are falling further and further behind. And as civilization moves forward, the difference between the haves and the have-nots is getting greater. And one of the reasons is, you know, there's always factors like nutrition and sanitation and so forth, and we've known that for a long time. When humans first came out of caves, the famous 400,000 years ago, the average person's life was 20 years. That's all. The average person lived 20 years. Today, we maybe have in Western society an average life expectancy of 80 to 85 or something like that. But that's not true in all parts of the world, because sanitation, nutrition is not equal everywhere. And so some people in less developed countries have a lower chance of living a long life. But also, they are having a lower chance of being prosperous and making something useful of themselves with their life, because they don't have access to something that all of us regard as almost as common as having water come out of the tap, which is internet access. The same phenomenon can be true with AI as it comes along. There will be a big divide between the haves and the have-nots. Those people that have access to AI and know how to use it, and those people that have no access to AI and don't know how to use it. And so is it fair that we're going to create a world where AI is dominant and makes our lives so much richer and better for those of us in places like this? And is it fair that people who live in, let's say, what's now called the global south or less developed world, or whatever you want to say, third world, or whatever the phrase you want to use, that those people know that they can't possibly catch up with you and have the life that you live, because they're not going to have access to the best parts of AI. We don't have a way to deal with this yet. We don't have a way to deal with the internet not being available to everybody. And surely we shouldn't make the same mistake in creating wonderful new technologies that can make our lives better with AI, but not make it available around the world and also around this country. We have a wealth divide in this country as well. And I fear that just as people are getting wealthier in the United States, income inequality is getting greater, and the lack of social mobility is getting greater. And the real fear I have with AI is, as it comes along, we'll be so excited by the technology and the wonders that it can do for people like us, but we won't be worried about what it can do for people who are in lower economic circumstances, or living in poverty, and basically don't have the means to get access to the benefits of AI. So as we progress with AI, I think it would be a good idea if we could think about this a bit. Think about how we can make AI more accessible to everybody and the benefits of it more accessible to everybody. Because if we do that, AI will then be a big benefit for everybody. If we don't do that, we're going to have a world of the haves and the have-nots, and it'll get worse and worse and worse. And I think that's not going to be good for humanity and society. Let me end there with say that I think I have an iPad. I was supposed to get some questions. Or any questions anybody has? Or what happened to the iPad? Is this the iPad is right here? Oh, okay, here it is. I told you I'm not a technology expert, so. And there's some questions here, but I don't see any of them. I don't see any questions here. Folks, anybody just want to raise their hands with any questions? Anybody have any questions? No. Am I depressed, everybody? Yes. Yes. Right here. Go ahead.
I like what you said about the importance of learning and reading, writing, communicating better. When I hear that, I think about the importance of continual learning.
Right.
And learning how to learn better. Do you feel that AI will help us do that better, or part of that is, do you think in a future world of AI, do we need to learn how to learn differently in a world of AI?
Well, I can't predict the future. I'd have to consult my AI consultant about that question, but I would say for sure, there is a view in many circles that you, when you get your college degree or graduate degree, you're done. These things are called commencements, which means beginning, not end. And I am amazed at how many people stop pretty much learning when they get their degree. The statistics are staggering about how few people still read books, do other things to get continuous education. AI, I think, might have the advantage of making people feel they need to keep on their toes more because the world's changing so much. But we need to have a system which regularly gets the best of AI in front of people and make people feel they should go back to some mechanism, some schooling or some kind of coursework so that they can keep up with what's going on in AI. Take AI. AI is changing every hour by the hour. And you know, what I learned from some of my AI experts yesterday is probably out of date today. And so I think AI, you really have to keep up with it and you know how to take advantage of it. So yeah, I think that would be a great idea. We should do more than that, but I think we have so many other things to deal with on AI, I worry that that will get left behind a bit. Anybody else? Yes, right. There's a question there, or you have a mic, or here and then there.
Thank you. You mentioned...
Wait, just get the mic so people can hear you.
Thank you. You've spoken a lot of advantages of AI that you see potentially in the future, and you touched on slightly on if it remains out of the hands of bad actors. What steps do you believe right now we could take to sort of prevent bad actors becoming...
That I think AI will...
Well, we can prevent those bad actors from getting advantage or taking, AI and using it in negative situations or for negative actions.
You mean for executives, you're saying, to do it?
No, just bad actors using AI for bad intentions.
Okay. Well, the internet has obviously made it possible for bad actors to do things like invade the internet and hack and so forth. And when the internet was invented, it wasn't thought that hacking would be the biggest problem, and so they made it kind of open access, and you can get into any part of the internet in ways that might have been prevented had they created the internet a little differently. But today, there's no doubt that a lot of people will try to find ways to use AI that will be disadvantageous to humanity generally, and I suspect the hackers in the world will figure out how to use AI in ways that won't be helpful to humanity. I don't know of a good way to deal with it. I think we can probably figure out in advance to do things better than we did with the hackers that have come along and have kind of perfected hacking to some extent, but I don't have an easy answer for that. I do think that bad actors will see AI as another tool that will enable them to get money from some people that don't want to give it to them, or other resources that they'll get that they shouldn't be getting. And I think that will happen. It'll be a big problem. And I don't have an easy answer for it. But just as I think there's going to be inequality between access to AI, I think there'll be increased criminal activity as a result of AI, because many people who are really smart in computers and AI will feel that they can do better by going on the dark side of life and try to take advantage of other people. Yeah, it's a big problem, and it hasn't really been addressed yet. Yes, yes, ma'am. Right here?
Hi.
Yes.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Waiting for the microphone. Thank you. Thank you. That was all fascinating. Appreciate it. My question is, we understand that with every new technology, there will, of course, be transitions, and I'm wondering, how should society, whether it's government or corporations, manage that transition so that it isn't so bumpy for a lot of groups of people? And my understanding is this is perhaps a unique situation in that it will actually be white-collar work that will get hit the hardest.
I don't think I know the answer to that, because I think each company that I know is trying to move forward as full steam ahead on AI, and they're not worried about the things you just asked about, how they make, steady progress. Everybody can go along on an even keel, and I think some companies are going to be much better able to take advantage of this, and I think some companies are going to be left way behind, and some employees are going to be left way behind. I won't scare you all with the statistics about how many workers in software companies are losing their jobs every day now because AI is replacing them in certain other companies. It can be I think it's very unfortunate. I'm afraid that young students are going to be afraid that AI is going to be disadvantageous for them, and they will, in some ways, do things they shouldn't do. But I don't think there's an easy answer to it on that. I think the U.S. government and other governments need to figure out ways to protect people much better, and also to kind of make certain that some people don't take unfair advantages of some technological advantage they have to disadvantage other people in society. But it's a big problem, not easily solved. So I have 17, I'm over now by 20 seconds, so I don't think I have any more time. So let me just conclude by saying I appreciate everybody's coming here, listening to me ramble about AI, and I hope all of you will do something important this summer, which is to go to see a Baltimore Orioles baseball game. We have a great team. We're going to win a World Series, hopefully, and we're going to use AI. And if you come here, you'll see how we'll use AI. So thanks very much, and I appreciate being invited. Thank you.